They always sat in the same booth, until one morning only one arrived. Every Tuesday and Friday, without fail, you could find them right there. That little booth by the window in the corner of Rosie's diner. Him, with his sultan pepper hair and a newspaper folded neatly beside his plate. Her, with a smile that could light up the whole room and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she laughed. Was Arture. And she was Eleanor. For 47 years, that booth was their spot. They weren't just customers. They were part of the diner's furniture, as constant as the smell of coffee and bacon. I started working at Rosie's 3 years ago. A college kid, trying to make tuition. They were the first regulars I met. On my first day, I was a nervous wreck, spilling a little coffee as I filled Arthur's cup. He just looked up from his paper, gave me a slow, gentle smile and said, "Don't you worry, son. A little turbulence just makes the landing smoother." Eleanor patted my hand and told me I was doing a fine job. From then on, they were my favorite table. They had a routine. Arthur always ordered the number 3. 2 eggs, over easy, bacon, and rye toast, with black coffee. Eleanor, she liked to switch it up. Sometimes pancakes, sometimes an omelette, but always with a side of fruit and a cup of Earl Grey tea, with 2 lemon slices. They'd talk for hours, not about anything world-changing, just life, the garden, the leaky faucet. Arthur was putting off fixing the funny thing their grandchild said on the phone. He'd read her snippets from the newspaper, and she'd tell him stories about her book club. Their conversation was a quiet, comfortable hum, the kind of background music that makes a place feel like home. Sometimes, if the diner was slow, I'd linger by their table a little longer than I needed to. Eleanor would ask about my classes, and Arthur would give me gruff but solid advice about my car troubles. They told me how they met. It was at a dance, right after he got back from his service. He said he was too shy to ask her, but his friend pushed him onto the dance floor. "Best show I ever got," he'd say, and Eleanor would blush like a teenager. She said he stepped on her toes all night, but he had kind eyes. They built a whole life from that one clumsy dance. A house, 2 kids, 4 grandkids, and a whole lot of Tuesday and Friday mornings. In that booth, they were a lesson in love, right there in vinyl and formica. Not the loud, dramatic kind you see in movies, but the quiet, steady kind. The kind that shows up day after day. The kind that knows you like black coffee and still finds new things to talk about after almost 50 years. They'd hold hands across the table sometimes, his wrinkled hand covering hers. It was such a simple, powerful gesture, a silent promise that said, "I'm still here. It's still you." Then came a Friday in October. The leaves outside were turning fiery shades of red and gold. I saw Arthur's old sedan pull into the parking lot, right in his usual spot. But when the driver's side door opened, only he got out. He walked into the diner alone. He looked smaller, somehow. The usual spark in his step was gone. He walked to the booth, their booth, and slid into his usual side. I walked over with the coffee pot, my hand hesitating. "Morning, Arthur," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just you today?" He looked up at me, and his kind eyes were filled with a profound sadness that seemed to swallow all the light in the room. He just nodded slowly. "Just me," he whispered, his voice raspy. He didn't have his newspaper. He just sat there, staring at the empty seat across from him. I poured his coffee without a word. "The number 3? I asked gently. He nodded again. And a cup of Earl Grey," he added, his voice cracking on the last word, "with 2 lemon slices." My heart felt like it had dropped into my shoes. I brought their order, his usual breakfast, and her usual tea. He didn't touch his food. He just picked up the teacup, her teacup, and held it in his hands, as if trying to warm them. He stared out the window, but I don't think he was seeing the autumn leaves. He was seeing a ghost. He was seeing 47 years of mornings sitting in that empty space across from him. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. Even the clatter from the kitchen felt muted. The other regulars, people who had seen Arthur and Eleanor for years, day old Canel, they looked over with quiet, sad glances, a shared, unspoken grief hanging in the air. He sat there for almost 2 hours. He didn't eat a bite. He just held her teacup. When he finally got up to leave, he placed a $20 bill on the table. Way too much for the order. As I went to give him his change, he just shook his head. "For you, son," he said. "She always said you were a good kid." He turned and walked out. His shoulders slumped. I watched him get into his car and drive away. On the table, his plate was untouched, but her teacup, was empty. He came back the next Tuesday, and the Friday after that, alone. Each time, he ordered the same thing, the number 3 for himself, and a cup of Earl Grey with 2 lemon slices for her. He never touched his food, but he always drank her tea. He'd sit there, in the quiet of the morning, having breakfast with a memory. It was heartbreaking and beautiful all at once. He was keeping his promise. He was still showing up. After a few weeks, something started to change. Old Mr. Henderson, who always sat at the counter, moved to the booth next to Arthur's one morning. He didn't say much, just morning, art, and went back to his own paper. The next week, Mrs. Gable, a widow herself, brought over a slice of her apple pie. "Thought you might like this," she said softly. Slowly, a new routine began to form around Arthur. People started sitting near him, including him in their quiet morning rituals. They didn't try to fill Eleanor's seat. Nobody could do that. Instead, they built a circle around him. They shared their own stories of loss, of love, of just getting through the day. The booth by the window was no longer just a symbol of what was lost. It became a testament to what remains. It's a story about how a simple diner, a cup of tea, and the quiet compassion of strangers can help a person navigate the deepest grief. Arthur still orders her tea. He still has breakfast with his Eleanor. But now, he's not so alone. He's surrounded by a community that understands that sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is to just sit with them in their silence, and maybe, just maybe, pour them another cup of coffee. He started eating his breakfast again. A few bites at first, then more. And every now and then, when someone says something funny, you can see the ghost of a smile on his face. It's not the same, but it's a start. It's a reminder that even after the deepest loss, life, in its own quiet way, goes on. Thanks for watching.